Hello and welcome back to another tutorial. It's been a bit of a while, but I'm gonna teach you about strings today. So strings in Java, we've been over them a little bit in previous tutorials, but they're pretty interesting. So what a string is quite literally an object. Although it appears at first like it could be a primitive type, like an integer or a double. Unlike primitive types, a string is actually an object and it can have methods called on it. So for example, a primitive type like a double, you can't do var dot something because it's primitive, it's not an object. Whereas with a string, you can in fact call methods on it. So like you can do equals and various other methods because it is in fact an object. Now, funnily enough, you can actually do new string because since a string is an object, it does in fact have a constructor. But what's weird about using the new string thing is that actually it's just creating a copy of this string. So what's the point in that? Because essentially, this is already a constructor of string. That, known as a string literal, is already creating a string. So why do you need to use a new string at all? That's why most of the time people avoid typing new string because it's not really necessary in most cases. However, the string literal is a bit weird in that if you create two strings with the same string literal typed out, they will technically use the same object here and here because they just want the Java program just wants to save memory. So it'll make these two the same object. Now you might be wondering, wait, if the Java program is going to use the same object here and here, isn't that a breach? Isn't that a leak? Like what happens if you like manipulate the string? If you call var.concat or whatever this is, and you concatenate the string to another string. Why did I type that? Added. And like, would that also manipulate var too? Well, actually, that gets into one of the fun things about strings, which is that they are immutable. Immutable means that a string cannot be changed at all once it's been created. Anything you do to the string will create a new string. So, for example, if I create a string v2 is equal to hdi plus 1, a 2. And remember, when you do a plus sign between two strings, that's called a concatenation. A concatenation will glue that second string onto the end of the first one. So what this does is, well, you might think, oh, okay. So, let me change that. So since I use var here and put in a new variable v2, wouldn't that change var's value to be hdi2? Well, that's not true, because if we print out var, we find that, in fact, var is still HDI, whereas v2 is now HDI2. When we did v2, when we added 2 onto the end of var, we created a new string entirely. We didn't use the old string, we created a new string. Now, this can be a bit difficult to remember at times. For example, if I do var.strip, which by the way, strip is a string method that removes all spaces from the beginning and end of the string. So for example, this is HDI. If I do var.strip, and this is not out.println var, as you can see, there are still spaces in the beginning and end. So what I have to do is I have to do var equals var.strip. And therefore, I have created a new string, which I put into var, which is the previous string stripped. Just to show you again, these are two different objects. So if I create a new string var2, which is var.stripped, these two will print out different objects. Var prints out with all the white space, and var2 prints out without any white space. This has been the source of bugs in my code. There have been literally times where I've been looking through my code trying to figure out what's wrong and found, oh, I use strip or substring or SumString method without recognizing that a string is immutable. So be careful of that. And so now let's move on to kind of how a string, what is a string in a sort of metaphysical sense? No, not a metaphysical. What's the word? Metaphorical. A string is called a string because it is literally like a string. It is a bunch of characters. Remember, char is a primitive data type, which represents a single letter, a single digit, a single punctuation mark, or whatever. A string is a bunch of characters all strung together in a sequence, which is why it's called a string. So what a string literally is a special representation of a list of characters. So a string being composed of characters has indexes, which means that a string, each character in the string corresponds to an index. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on. So for example, in the string hello, we have, let me just comment this out so that we don't get any weird errors. Hello, we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Actually, and 4, because the quotation marks don't count as part of the string. Because let me just put spaces so that it's easier to tell. Each letter in the string corresponds to one index. So the H is 0, the E is 1, the L is 2, the other L is 3, and the O is 4. This makes it, this allows you to sort of manipulate strings in a way or get data from them. One notable way to do this is string.char@. So if I have a string hello equals hello, and I do system.out.println hello.char@0, what do you think will print out? Well, what's going to print out is in fact an H, because the first letter in hello is an H. Now, it'll give you this letter with the exact case it's in. So since H is uppercase here, it'll give you an uppercase H. And this works for any kind of symbol in the beginning. So a dot, it'll print out a dot. Now, obviously, you can do this for other indexes. So for a 1, it'll print out the E. For the 2, it'll print out a 1, an L, not a 1, that's an L. And so this is, for example, a way to figure out where a certain letter exists in the string. You cycle through the string with a loop, and for each letter in the loop, you will print out the character and you will use equals equals to compare it, because unlike strings, characters are primitive data types. Now, the fact that characters are primitive data types also means that they're not directly strings. On the off chance that you have a method which only accepts strings, you would add plus empty string to the end of character. Because remember, whenever you concatenate a string to anything, any data type, it'll convert the data type to a string by using either the toString method or by using the natural string representation. For example, with integers, the natural string representation is just the number and things like that. You cannot, however, cast the character to a string. You cannot cast anything to a string because a string is not a superclass of or subclass of any of the primitive data types. In fact, a string can't be extended at all. A string is what is known as a final class, which means it cannot be subclassed. Now, another thing that you can do with strings is index of. So what does index of do? Well, it will tell you where one can find a certain symbol in the string or a phrase. So you can do this with characters. For example, H, what do you think it's going to print out? 0, because the first symbol in the string is H. Similarly, if you put an O, what's it going to print out? 4, because this is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 is an O. Now, what happens with an L? Because notice that there are two L's in the string. Well, actually, it will just return the index of the first L, 2, 0, 1, 2. What if you want to find the second L? Well, you can do last index of. Last index of will start from the end. So it'll give you a 3, because the last L has an index of 3. Now, if you have a central L, it will still only find the last index. So that's a 4 in this case, because the central L shifted it to the right. Now, what if you want to find the central L? How do you get to the central L? Because there's an L on this side and there's an L on that side. So you can't use index of and you can't use last index of. Well, what you can do is pass in a second parameter to index of. So 0, 1, 2, 3. What you can do is ask index of to start searching from index 3. What it'll do is then, therefore, it'll start searching from the index 3 and look for the first L after index 3, which is 3. This can also be like, for example, I don't want to find this L, I don't want to find this L, I just want to find the L in this section, which is this L. Since E is now at index 3, when you search, it'll now tell you index 4, because the L is at index 4. So by using this first index parameter, you can find the instance of a character which is after the given index here. Now, what happens if you try to find a letter that's not in the string? For example, if I want to find an A, -1, it'll return the index -1. What this means is that this is how you can check if a letter is not in the string. So, if hello.index of A equals -1, my typing skills, out.println valid, because we don't like A's here. We want everything except for an A. Valid. Else, invalid. So if I type what's up, which has an A in it, invalid. So index of can also be used to check for just like general, general phrases too. So I can search for what. So if the statement has what, invalid, because the statement does have what, and therefore it's not finding -1. Whereas if the statement is hello, because the hello has no what in it, it'll return -1, and therefore it is valid. So using the index of, you can just find the position of letters in the string or the position of phrases in the string. This can help if you want to, for example, search for all the number of letters in a string which are of a certain character. You can use a while loop which checks for index of the first letter, then it uses the first index parameter to move on to the next index of the letter, and so on until index of returns -1. Now, another fun method with this is substring. So let's change this to what's up, just so we have kind of two words to go with. Now, what does a substring method do? Well, what it does is it takes it creates a new string which starts at the first index given and ends at the second index given. So how that appears is, for example, if I do hello.substring 0 and then 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, this will in fact give me forgot my print statement. Don't do that. This will in fact give me what's. Now you may have noticed that I put a 6, even though I counted up to 5. That's because the substring method will give you all the letters from the first index, including the first index, up till but not including the last index. So it'll give me W0, H1, A2, T3, apostrophe 4, S5, but not 6. This can be useful. For example, 6, 7, 8. If you wanted to have the whole string, you just type substring 0, 9. That will give you the whole string. Or you could do substring hello dot length. Length is literally the length of the string, how many characters in the string. That'll give you the entire string. Substring doesn't need a second parameter because if you don't put a second parameter, it'll just give you the entire string from that parameter to the end. So, for example, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If I did substring 7 with no second parameter, it'll just give me up because that's the rest of the string. Similarly, if I did substring with a parameter 9, it'll also give me up because that's the end of the string. So substring can be used to give you a segment of the string, which can be useful. You know, if you only want to have, for example, if someone gives you a string which is formatted with this in a specific manner, like brackets, well, you might want to just go hello.substring 1 substring.length, hello.length minus 1. That way you'll only get what's between the brackets instead of getting the brackets. So this can be useful for things such as that. And now with just the general rules of strings, you also have concatenation, right? So let's say you want to insert a character into a string. You can do hello.substring, for example, like let's say 0, comma, let me just remove these brackets, we don't need them anymore. 0 dot comma 6, right? That'll be what? That'll be W2S. Then you want to insert a character. So what's maybe a better phrase. So what's good? Or maybe how you, and instead I'll do 4. And so what if you want to insert a how are you, right? So you can do hello.substring from 0 to 4 and hello.substring from, what is this? 4, 5, 6, 7, 5. So it starts at 5. Hello.substring 5, and you just want to insert a R. So what that'll give you, good job. So what that will give you is how are you? Because this selects the first word, hello. This selects everything after that, the you, and this R with a space at the end, because the space here is attached to the first half. The how are here will therefore be inserted into the middle. So this does mean that that you can insert things using substrings, and these all can help you to create, for example, various ways of representing information. So, for example, if you have a my name, or not my name, but I am years old, and you have a little spot here where you can insert an age. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you go 0 to 5 and 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 0 to 5, and then you go hello substring 5, and you just insert age. So int age equals, well, my age is 16. So insert age here. So 16, you can then just insert the value you want to in between two substrings. There are other ways to do this, including complex classes, such as the string format class, the decimal format class, I think is what it's called, and just the string.format method. And there are those that require like regexes and things like that, which are all complicated, next level Java kind of things. But yeah, if you want a simple way to just insert something into a string, you can just do that. Another way you can insert something into a string is replace. So if you have, let's say you write age, you can do hello.replace age with age. Now, you might notice that it's throwing an error. That is because age is actually an integer, and this method only accepts characters or strings. So you just need to cast it into, concatenate it into a string by adding on an empty string at the end. Then it'll replace age with my age. So replace is another useful way to do it. Now, last but not least, I will cover comparisons. So as I said before, using the equals thing, it can tell you whether two things are the same objects, but it's not reliably going to tell you whether two things are equivalent. So that's where the equals method comes in, and we use that for previous objects. And in the case of strings, it's really quite simple. It just tells you whether two strings are equal. So string hello and string hello2, as you can tell, they are equivalent. They both have the same characters in the same order with no white space in the beginning or end. So if I do system.out.println hello.equals hello2, what do we get? We will get a true. So hello and hello2 are equivalent, so therefore we get a true through through the equals method. Now, if I change this to h, because the equals method is case sensitive, this now returns false, lowercase h. Now, another one is equals ignore case. This is case insensitive, so this will return true for this, and it will return true if I change to a lowercase h. But it will not return true if I change this into a 3, because that is no longer a letter that is matching in this string. The equals ignore case method also, it doesn't do anything with like punctuation marks and stuff because those don't have a capital mapping. So it'll only ignore the capitalization of, actual letters. There's also compare to. What compare to does is kind of odd. It does what's known as a lexicographic comparison, I believe. And what it'll do is if the first string is lexicographically above the second string, it will actually return a negative number. If the first string is lexicographically equivalent to the second string, it'll return a 0. And if the first string is lexicographically greater than or below the second string, it'll return a positive number. So what that means is that basically if you compare A and B, you'll get a negative number because A is above B in the in like lexicography in the alphabet, right? And it's kind of like alphabetic order. So, hello, and if I change this to what's a letter that's after H? Jello. Yes, that makes sense. You get a, oh wait, H is after G. My bad. Mellow. You get a negative number because H is before M. Whereas, back to Jello, since G is before H, you now get a positive number because H is in fact greater than G. Capital letters go before lowercase letters. So if you put a capital letter first, it will give a negative number instead of a positive number. There is also, compared to ignore case, and what that'll do is just ignore the letter casing entirely. So you'll get a 0 because these two are now equivalent since they ignore the case. And, this allows you to alphabetically order things, for example, because you can use the negative number and positive number to figure out, oh, if the comparison of these two numbers is these two phrases is negative, move the second phrase before the first phrase. Or wait, no, don't change anything about the phrases. If it's positive, move the second phrase before the first phrase, and then you can do an alphabetical order. That is basically how to compare two strings in terms of alphabet. You know how in class, for example, your like attendance roster in a school will have the person with the A's in their first and last name top, the person with the B's will be next to the person with the C's, and so on. That's simple alphabetical order. The last string comparison method I want to teach you is contains. So what contains does is it checks if the second string is contained within the first string. So now you can see right away that hello is contained within hello. So this returns true. Similarly, hello, didn't want to put a bad word there, is contained within hello, also returns true. However, what's up is not contained within hello. In fact, it's even longer than hello. So that contains false. Up is not contained within hello. So that also returns false. And similarly, hello too, because it's slightly longer than hello, is not contained within hello. So that returns false. Contains just tells you whether the second string is located inside of the first string. Obviously, it uses a sort of, equals comparison, which means it doesn't check whether the object is literally located inside of this object. It just checks whether the letters are located within this set of letters. That's all I have for strings today. These are all very simple kind of methods, but that's not to say that there aren't more complex string methods. There is actually a Java documentation on strings. So it'll tell you various methods you can use on strings. For example, you can use like the ends with, which is similar to contains, except it only checks the ending of the string and checks if a certain substring is within the end of the given string. You can use the hash code, which is actually which is an object method. Back when you're learning about objects, I believe I said that it's one of the ways to order objects, and it's not really something you'll use often. You might use isEmpty. IsEmpty will tell you if the string's length is 0, which means if the string has nothing inside it. So that would be a string which looks like that. That would be a string which returns true for isEmpty. Then there's also other methods like, does it say lowercase anywhere here? To lowercase. This will change the string's letters to lowercase. And there's to uppercase, which will change the string's letters to uppercase. To string, which just returns the exact string. And there's various methods in the documentation. The documentation of Java is a really useful tool. And the Eclipse documentation actually contains the documentation. So if you type hello dot, it'll automatically bring up all the methods that are available to strings, and it'll allow you to look at their documentation right next to it like this. So if you type hello dot and this doesn't appear for whatever reason, just press Control and then space. So thanks for watching my video. I hope you learned something about strings today. If you have questions, there's a comment section which you can leave them in. And I hope you have a nice day.